G'day, it's Clive Rocksinger here. Well, I got my lathe going and I had it running for a few seconds and then suddenly flames started leaping out of the motor. Now I do electronics, so I went and googled it on the computer. Flames coming out of motor, and I got a few replies. One bloke went, ha ha ha, I don't really know what he meant. Another bloke made reference to my head and someone's penis. I don't really know what he meant either. And one bloke did reply. He said, your motor is, like, it's hard to read, your motor's fucked. Oh dear, that doesn't sound very good at all. So this motor's a very old motor. I reckon I'll get a quid for it, because when you've got a lathe with an old motor on it, they don't want to part with the bits. And I reckon if I sell that motor, I reckon I'd get a couple of hundred for it, because it's a rare motor. It's a 240 adaptation. They used to be 3-phase or running off a main belt in the factory, and this one was fitted 240 volt. But this is actually a workshop lathe intended for a mechanic shop, and it's a precision lathe. I had a bloke telling me, one of the farmers around here, he said it's actually quite a good lathe. It's a precision lathe, and he said it's in quite good nick. So what I'll do, I want to put an ABB motor on it because I like the shape, but they're a horrible blue colour, which is a problem to someone like me. I know you're screaming, you know, go fag. But there's a motor there, and it's actually off a saw, which is over here, which I was going to rebuild. And it's got a switch on it that's actually part of it. And it's a later model motor. It hasn't got the box on the side of it. I think the horsepower's around about the same. If it's underpowered, it'll temporarily do to get the lathe going, and I'll just have to run sharp tips and do light cuts. And the interesting thing about the crane is, at the end of the day, I used to feel guilty spending time when it wasn't necessary. So you'd be hurrying and you wouldn't do a good job, and then something happens and then it's a disaster. Now I've kind of taken into consideration that it takes time, and I'm giving myself time to use the crane, and boy, I'm finding it's handy, because normally I'd have taken the risk of dropping that on the ground, and luckily I got it down there without damaging it. And you know, dropping motors on the ground probably isn't a good idea. And so now that I've made time for the crane, really it's just a matter of time. I've got all the time in the world, I'm on a pension. So I just took my time to set the crane up and, you know, tied it all up. I tied it up a bit horrible. I was a bit worried that rope was going to break. But I've got it down on the ground there, she's all nice and safe. And now I've got to get her up on the bench, and I've got to put that pulley onto the other motor. And I might have to have the polarity reversed. I don't know whether it's going in the right direction. It's probably underpowered, but then again, being a late model motor, it's probably, you know, pretty equivalent. So it'll do for the time being until I get my ABB motor. Yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment when the motor burned out, but the good thing is I got to learn all about my lathe before it fried. So the guy did mention to me that the motor's probably going to be the first thing to go, and I've had this thing for about 8 years, so it's not broken. I've managed to keep it all in one piece, and now I've just got to swap the motor over. I've got me press, I can now press that wheel into shape, and yeah, I'm learning about me lathe. Any motor will bloody do, it's got to go round and round circles, that's all it's got to do. If it's not a very powerful motor, I just use sharp tips. I want to put a quick change head on this, so when I get the motor, I'd like to get, I mean, you know, just put, I don't really want to put a 3-horse, that's to max out the current into place. I worked out wattages from a power point, and I worked out that the highest number you could run off a single phase is 3 horse, and but I've got 2-phase power here. But I asked the guy whether you could put a 2-phase motor on this machine, but I probably think it'd probably tear the machine apart. But I want to put a quick change here. But what I'm going to do is, when I put the carbide tips, I'm going to get a smaller tip head. So where you've got the full-size tips, which where are we? Where's a good example? You got all different size cutting tips, and what I want to go is go for a smaller tip size, a smaller Well, thing to put the cutting tip in, which I don't know what the proper technical name is. But I want to get a smaller size one, so that it doesn't require as much horsepower, but I want the quick change head so I can swap these over, so when you want to put a straight one or a curved or a left or a right, I don't have to keep mucking around unbolting it all the time. I don't like this light lantern type head, and I want to put a quick change on it. So yeah, and they're not that, I think they're not expensive, I think they're about a couple of $100. So yeah, I've got the motor on the ground, and I've got to try and fit that other pulley to it. The other motor goes, it's fine, and at least I'll get them going round in circles again. I'll be able to press that on properly. And I'm even thinking about putting different pulley set on this. Put a later model pulley set, because you can get more advanced pulleys. Well, more advanced pulleys and belts, V-belts. You can get special V-belts for these. And I could probably put more gears on it. So, you know, this old flat belt drive was alright because it was very forgiving, but by the same token, if I'm going to go for a higher horsepower motor, it might start slipping, because it's not designed to take that sort of pressure. So I may get in problems with that and may have to think about putting a different set of ratios on there. But I mean, you know, I think, oh, why waste money on an old growth, because I can't afford another one, and it's the only one I'll ever have. And you know, if I spend enough time and effort on it, it'll eventually be a good load, and then I'll die. That's how it works. The guy that sold me this was 70, and he set up his workshop, he got it all beautiful, and he dropped dead. That's kind of how it works. A Greek bloke told me once, he said the first 100 years is a bastard, but after that it's alright. So, Clive Rock Singer over and out.